podcasserole. Welcome in.
You are listening to an Imperfect Leader, the Superintendent and Leadership Podcast, a proud member of the Podcasserole Network. And look at that. Who's coming on? It's Jamie. Hello, Jamie.
Hey there. What's going on with you?
How are you? You look so nice. You get a haircut or anything? Nothing? Oh, it's all trim, fixed up, ready to go.
Like I said, when you're on Zoom, it's like it looks nice on the top, but I've got sweatpants on the bottom for sure.
Oh my God. That's so funny.
How are you? How's your family?
Everybody's fine. Yeah, everybody's doing okay.
Glad to hear it.
Glad
to hear it. Yeah, everybody's okay. Joaquin got home from college last night.
Oh, wow.
He's on winter break officially, which is really wonderful. And my favorite new thing with Leo, specifically, and then Leo and Joaquin, is Leo has gotten into playing chess, which he calls chest. And
so he's a real life master here. He's
a
real grandmaster. Sorry, life master is bridge. And then there's
grandmaster. Joaquin was and still is a chess player and got really into it. And still, I think he still dabbles. I wouldn't say he's into it much anymore in the same way that he was when he was in high school. But I cannot wait because I hope our youngest isn't listening to this podcast, but Santa is bringing him a pretty killer chess set this Christmas.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And I can't wait to see my eldest and my youngest playing chess together.
We've really missed our
really
niche market if your youngest is listening to this podcast. We're really killing it with the elementary crowd.
The 7-year-olds actually really find it
We're slaying it in second grade.
Fascinating. I hope that's true. I mean, if that's true, then we are truly getting multiple.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man.
Doing great.
Kids are on the playground being like, did you hear this, the latest Imperfect Leader? Oh, man. I heard you're getting a chest. What? I'm behind. I'm like 2 weeks behind. Oh, man.
There's so many episodes.
Yeah, and they're all from Long Island, the kids. What are you talking about? I didn't know.
Oh, that's funny.
That's so funny.
Is the accent on Long Island different? Basically, Montauk to what's the closest city to? Yeah, is it?
I mean, it's 120 miles long, but yeah, I mean, there's some similarities, of course, but yeah, if you're from just outside of Queens, it's going to sound a little bit more Queens, Brooklyn than all the way out there.
Yeah,
who knows what happens out there? It's so far away. Although it's where my parents met. They met out.
It is so far away. Yeah, it's so far away.
And they won't tell us. We're like, where'd you meet? Oh, at the Driftwood Motel. Oh, that's so cool. Like at the bar or at the Driftwood Motel. In the lobby? I mean, how did you... No, we met through mutual friends. Why are you being so cagey? What's happening? They won't tell us. I don't know.
That's fascinating.
All right, I want to go back to chess for a second and just say, if you're looking for a good chess coach and Leo would like to have a weekly chess lesson.
We'll see. Right now, I think Leo is mostly interested in the fact that they're called knights and it looks like a castle.
Yeah,
and,
you might want to start with it's called
the moves are different. No, I don't think so. No, this is where I think you and I veer as parenting. No, he should go with chess until all the way. It's like when my kids ask me whether is Santa real to Joaquin, I'm like, yep, 100%. I will never ever say to my
I'd be so mad if Hanukkah Harry showed up at your house to tell him Santa Claus not real. And it's called chess. Anyway, have a great day.
Oh my God. I'm interested in talking to Hanukkah Harry. I would like to know, what are you doing over here? The Jewish community is tiny. It's a hall.
And they have the elf on a shelf.
If you are here, do you happen?
They call it the mensch on the bench. Guys, cut it out. How about we just go have your elf on a shelf? Good luck. God bless you.
Yes, keep it. Yeah. Yeah, that's not the copying of Christmas, that kind of following that path, bad idea.
That's the whole thing with the 8 presents. It all came about, I believe, because they're like, oh God, we're going to lose all these kids. We better do gifts. And so the parents are like,
kids.
We're going to lose them at Christmas. Like, all right. Are socks okay? Socks are fine on the 8th day. Fine. What about underwear? 7th day. Sweater? 6th day. Come on, you got to do something big on one of those first few days. Keep the kids engaged.
That's so funny. I was a religion major. And my absolute favorite course was Nordic religions. I loved it. It was like, and this is as a D&D geek growing up. It was all that. Man. And the stories of the origins of Christmas and the reasoning behind the inability of Christianity basically to dominate the Vikings. They were just losing perpetually. And eventually they're like, we're never going to win. And the Vikings said, well, do your religion if you take our biggest one, if the biggest one becomes your biggest one. And they said, basically, you have to move the birth of Jesus Christ from the birth of Jesus Christ in June to the birth of Jesus Christ at the solstice. And that was the whole point of the solstice. And of course, in Nordic countries matters.
Is returning.
Damn, it's dark.
Yeah.
It's dark. And
There's a
cold.
reason why they have berserkers. The word berserk. The Norse people were going berserk. You see those guys? They're berserkers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There is, exactly.
That's interesting. All right, listen to this. Listen to this, Rennie. I'm about to do a sponsor post here because you've given me the perfect avenue into it. You ready? So what they had to do was honor the Vikings' voice. And it actually makes me think of our guest today, Nyah Hamlett, and the fact that it actually makes me think of IXL, who's a sponsor of our program. Because when Nyah talks about empowering students and staying true to their values, even when the pressure hits, I think about IXL, how it really helps put those values into practice. Their platform gives teachers real-time insights and personalized learning paths, and so every student gets what they need. Teachers don't have to have 12 different tools, and it's equity you can actually operationalize. So there you go. IXL, check them out at ixl.com/imperfect. Okay, our guest today is somebody.
Nyah Hamlett.
Yeah.
I do. I knew Nyah when she was chief of staff in Loudoun County in Virginia is where I met her. And she went on to be the superintendent in one of the first districts I ever partnered with as an outside consultant in Chapel Hill-Carrboro City Schools in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And now in Montgomery County, the behemoth that is Montgomery County Schools. She is the Chief Equity Development Officer. That's her official title. I will say, I don't really want to say much here beyond, I invited Nyah because I know her to be on the podcast.
She is a profound person. I mean...
This is what I'm saying. No, never mind.
Okay. Sorry. I do that to you all the time.
Nyah, you know how there's a few episodes where we're like, oh my God, this person. Terry Morgan, recently from Kentucky. Go listen to Terry Morgan, if those of you that are listening. That's a great episode. And all the episodes are wonderful. There are a few that really stand out. And Dr. Hamlett, I'm even getting emotional. Like that, it's that good. She is that reflective, that thoughtful. Why? Goodness gracious. How she describes the work of student leadership was like a surgeon, precise, clear. And then the amount of humility in this woman, I'm like, this is a genius here. This is a genius.
Then let's get into it.
Absolutely loved it.
So I'm going to tell you, don't flinch. And there's a reason why I say don't flinch, because she's going to talk about that in a moment. So you're listening to An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents and Leadership Podcast. I'm Peter Stiepelman.
And I'm James Manson.
And he always takes too long to say it. And we'll see you on the other side. Today on An Imperfect Leader, we're joined by Dr. Nyah Hamlett. Dr. Hamlett recently served as the superintendent for Chapel Hill-Carrboro Schools in North Carolina and is now the Chief Equity and Development Officer with Montgomery County Public Schools in Maryland. Nyah, welcome to An Imperfect Leader.
Thank you for having me.
I'm thrilled to have you. I've really been looking forward to our conversation because your former district and my former district, we were like sister districts. We were partner school districts through MSAN. And for those who are listening, MSAN is really where the Minority Student Achievement Network, and it was where we learned about things like AVID, for example. And actually, I came to your district about 10 years ago and saw really so many similarities to my district. One, I guess maybe not so nice, would be to say there are more degrees than a thermometer in that school district. They're going to tell you how to do your job, but you don't have to respond to that. I'll just tell you that's how it was for me. But no one really understands what it's like to lead in a university town unless they've done it. But also, I would say probably that you had really good opportunities to do some creative and courageous things as well. But I want to talk about you, if that's all right. And I've really become interested in your don't flinch leadership approach to leading, which, as I understand it, emphasizes standing firm in authenticity and vulnerability, especially in the face of extreme pressure. And so I guess let's start there. Would you talk a little bit about the don't flinch leadership philosophy and how it's helped you in your own leadership?
Absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head. So for me, don't flinch leadership is really about standing firm in your core values, who you are as a person, who you are as a leader, leading authentically, and then holding as steady as possible under pressure. And even when it's uncomfortable or perhaps even unpopular. So for me, it really means choosing courage over convenience, especially when issues of equity or student voice or perhaps even systemic change are involved. I think it's just so important. In Chapel Hill-Carrboro City Schools, which is the district where I served as superintendent for the past 4.5 years, I'm in a new role now, as you mentioned. The Don't Flinch leadership philosophy was born and also tested constantly through my work in Chapel Hill, whether it was navigating reopening schools during COVID or addressing racial equity or confronting deeply ingrained traditions. That philosophy was continually tested. For me, it also means not shrinking yourself to make others comfortable while still approaching difficult conversations with empathy. Humility is super important, and vulnerability. Approaching it from a learner's growth mindset, I think, is so necessary in Don't Flinch leadership or in leadership in general, especially when you're in high visibility roles like a superintendent. You're constantly balancing external pressures with your kind of internal compass of what's right for kids or what's right for staff or the community. So,
As you're describing this, I mean, so much comes to mind. Everything from attendance areas in terms of everybody says, oh, we probably need to reduce enrollment at this school. Or if you're building a new school, I understand you got to fill it, but not with my kid because this is our school. We go here. And then they say, but it's okay for that part of the town. They can go to that other school, but not for us. And then they start these campaigns of start to finish. We're all going to start and finish at the schools and those types of things. Then I think of, as you were describing it, things like access to advanced courses and AP courses or international baccalaureate courses or higher level CTE courses. And the system was set up for a particular group of kids to be able to access those classes. So you set up these prerequisites and whose parent is more likely than not to insist that their child take algebra earlier so that they can access certain courses and those types of things. So I imagine Don't Flinch leadership. Am I hitting on any of the top ones that come to mind for you?
All of the above, and I can tell you have experience leading in a college town. But really,
my kid needs to take algebra 2 in 6th grade. Like, what?
And if you can be a superintendent and have all the experience in the world, but it's, hey, we know what's best and you're going to do what we say. And communities do tend to go on these email writing campaigns or, I guess, trying to amplify voice and numbers. But again, Don't Flinch doesn't mean ignoring criticism. It means hearing
that's a really
it.
good distinction. Yep.
It does. You can't ignore the criticism, but it means you have to hear it, right? You have to process it, but it's about not letting it compromise your integrity. And honestly, it's really about, I would say it's not about being fearless. It's about really leading through the fear or the obstinance or the obstacles with clarity and purpose.
You mentioned the pandemic, so I'd like to think about this for a second. You took on the superintendency in the Chapel Hill-Carrboro City Schools January 21. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
That is an interesting time because I was retiring at the end of that school year. So having led through the pandemic and we were exhausted and you were like, yeah, I'm exhausted. I'm about to take over this exhausting job. Wow. And this is all before widespread vaccinations and things like that. So I'm curious, I mean, obviously what were the sort of significant challenges you faced? But I guess I am curious. So without flinching, you had to lead through in these uncertain days and navigating a new job and a new community in this role. Can you describe that a little bit without having to look for like a gallon of whiskey because any one of us who led through this period, those are hard times.
And doing that while being a novice superintendent.
Exactly. Welcome to superintendency.
Exactly. Yeah, the district was deep into remote learning. So I got there in January of 2021. By March, I was able to move the district into a hybrid approach where if you so chose as a family that, your kids could come to school in person and there were a lot of masking protocols and those types of things. But we were, if not the last, we were one of the last in the state of North Carolina to return to in-person instruction. And I had only been there 3 months before I was able to get the community to agree to allow some children and staff to come back. So the emotions were heightened. And of course, there was widespread distrust in public systems at that time. And you mentioned this, serving in a college town where over 14% of residents have doctoral degrees. Everyone is an expert on something.
Yes.
I was in the middle of the research triangle where
Of course.
there are a number of public health officials. There were nationally recognized epidemiologists who were my parents and staff members or coaches. There were pediatricians, child psychologists, researchers, you name it, right? So they lived there. They sent their children to school there. So, I mean, that was...
So you got this pediatric
time.
infectious disease expert representing the research triangle with Duke, UNC, I can't remember.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And they say, Dr. Hamlett, are you a medical doctor? You go, no, I never said I was.
No.
However, this is the advice I'm getting from my health department, from many of you. And I'm trying to make the very best decision to advise my locally elected board, because actually I don't totally get to decide, at least not in Missouri.
That's right.
We could decide to close, but they had to be part of the deciding to open.
Correct. Yep. Same in North Carolina. And so I had to work closely with my board, who was just getting to know me. They just hired.
And you getting to know them.
Exactly. So I would say navigating the pandemic required building trust while making decisions with limited and ever-changing information. And I just chose to prioritize transparent and frequent communication, really, even when I didn't have all the answers. That was my go-to strategy. And also at that time, amplifying student voices became essential for me. Students were living the consequences of our decisions in real time, so it was critical to center their experiences. And the difficult thing was that I was meeting everyone through the little 4x4 box and whatever it is on Zoom and these platforms, because I didn't get the opportunity to do those listen sessions and go on a tour.
Of course, right.
I was meeting people through Zoom meetings.
Right, through seeing their hands are up. I see your hand is up, Mr. Johnson. I'm going to unmute you now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
That's
So
really
don't
hard.
flinch, really, I guess, don't flinch helped me be transparent about the unknowns while keeping safety and wellness at the forefront of the work that was before us each day. And that was a priority.
Okay, so I'm curious, what was your most outlandish public comment that you got? Do you have one that comes to mind? I've got two that like are battling each other. Oh, yeah.
Related to the pandemic, I've got to think about that one, Peter.
Okay.
That's
mine.
Because there were some pretty, and then
Yeah,
I think
I mean-
about public comment, what people actually said versus what people emailed, which was still
Sure.
somewhat
Some
a
of them
public
are,
comment.
those are
so-
some gems. Yeah, those are all publicly accessible. But so I had two. One was an individual who said, Dr. Stiepelman, this was about masks. Dr. Stiepelman, if I were married to you, I would divorce you. You're a chicken. And then she put on a chicken head, like a large, like mascot chicken head. It was fantastic. I was glad to have a mask at the time because my whole face was like, oh.
Yeah.
And then the other one was the gentleman who came up and said, I don't know a lot about viruses, but I do watch a lot of zombie movies. And then went on to tell me what he thought we should be doing based on that expertise. So those are my two. If any come to mind, you feel free to share yours.
Yeah, I'll have to share some. But I'm sure there's some that are probably pretty comical, but none from top of mind.
Okay, no problem. Our guest today is Dr. Nyah Hamlett, the Chief Equity and Development Officer with Montgomery County Public Schools in Maryland. And in the leadership model that I use to advise others, there's a dimension, leaders learning work. And it's really like the brains of what we do as leaders. And in that dimension, there's a term, harvesting the collective wisdom. I imagine this is something that you did routinely. And as you described it first as Zoom boxes, and then certainly as you were back in seat and able to really get to know your community, you were harvesting the collective wisdom. I know that you're now doing that in your new role. And so I read something that you do about amplifying and heating student voices. And I really appreciate that because so many leaders that I get to interact with put students last. Oh, I talk to teachers, I talk to staff, I talk to parents. Oh yeah, and I talk to students. And I'm thinking, they're the kids who are going to inherit the district as adults in the future. This is their experience. And so in your words, you said they are a wellspring of ideas, singular perspectives, and diverse concerns. And so how have you done that? How have you ensured that students feel truly heard, truly valued, and part of decision-making processes? So would you mind talking a little bit about that?
Yeah, I could go on and on about this all day. So that student engagement for me really came from this notion, and we hear it often from staff, from parents, community members, and ourselves sometimes. When I was in school, this and this happened. I have to remind my husband often when he's talking to our own children, I'm like, okay, but it's not 1992 anymore, right? So in Chapel Hill-Carrboro City Schools, student engagement wasn't, for me, it wasn't a checkbox. It was embedded into the decision-making fabric of our district. There was a program that I started called Equity and Empathy Ambassadors, where I had a group of about 40 to 50 high school students. And then we had a junior ambassadors program. They didn't meet as often, but the high schoolers, they led focus groups. They reviewed policies. They advised on major initiatives like grading equity, class rank reforms, aligning high school scheduling across the district, which was a challenge that we had grappled with for decades. And their voices were not just, they weren't like filtered or sanitized or anything like that. They were truly a part of the process from start to finish. And I used different resources. So I leaned heavily on an organization called Our Turn. I leaned heavily on their superintendent's roadmap to student engagement to really operationalize the work. But their framework really helps us move beyond tokenistic listening sessions to real shared decision-making power. So students weren't just being heard, they were actually shaping policy. And it was so exciting to just be in the room with those young people. I used to call them fierce and fearless. And they had no qualms about holding adults accountable, which I loved and I tried to establish early on with them. But
I always wonder where we lose that, because it's so true.
Yeah.
They are
Yes.
fearless in advocating what they know to be right. I mean, and
That's
adults
right.
often we know what's right, but it's not easy, so we choose not to do it.
That's right.
And
I
they're like,
think
no excuse, just do it.
sometimes I think this generation still waits for permission to be in that space or to feel like they're in that safe and brave space to do. And then there are others, don't get me wrong, there are others who are like, they're just going to tell you like it is. But we also used a racial equity decision-making protocol to ground our work in equity. One question that we always came back to, that I still come back to today in decision-making, is who will experience the burden or benefit if we make this decision? I love that question. And I think it came from the racial equity impact assessment through Race Forward, but we modified the REIA and made our own racial equity decision-making protocol. But that singular question literally shifted conversations from theory to impact. And what better way to do that than to do that with students?
I imagine you actually answered the question, not just posed it as a rhetorical. As we're making this decision, let's be mindful of who benefits and who is burdened by this decision, but rather let's name it. Who's going to be burdened by this? Who's going to be benefited?
And in those meetings, Peter, it was I had to model what I expected of the other district leaders or school leaders who joined us for those meetings. And we would ask those questions, but we had to button our own lips and actually listen and let the students talk, let the students lead, let the students facilitate. Now, it's important to note that not every decision aligned with every student's perspective, right? So, for example, during our class rank and grading policy revisions, or especially the high school scheduling assessment,
Ours was weighted grades when we brought it to students.
Oh,
Should we have
I
weighted
can't-
grades now? Have weighted grades?
Yeah,
So,
I can only imagine. We spent hours on grading policies.
mhm.
I can only imagine. But yeah, some of our ambassadors disagreed with those outcomes. But what mattered was that they had a seat at the table. Their insights were critical and they knew that. And their dissent actually sharpened the conversation. And the other thing with that, I would say, is the impact of the work was not just procedural, it was cultural. It was a part of cultural shifts. I always say, don't allow adult issues or decisions to get in the way of what children need. So students became partners in leadership, not passive recipients of some decision that the adults in the district made. So
Did you have students as board members?
no, we did not.
I didn't either. And I've seen districts do that. And I'm always curious on how do you do that in a way that is authentic, that it doesn't feel like you've just had, I don't know, a veneer of student involvement. And because they can't be involved in a number of decisions when it comes to HR or certain finances or I don't know, and yet some swear by it. And so I'm always curious to think that through.
So in MCPS here in Maryland, we do have a student board member, and that is the student is elected by their peers, and they do have some voting rights.
I'm going to have to come back and talk to you about that.
Yeah, I'm still
Part
learning
two
what
of our
that's like.
conversation. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm really
absolutely.
curious about that.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you a question that I ask every guest who comes on our program. How does
Sure.
the term an imperfect leader resonate with you?
Ooh, I would say the term imperfect leader resonates deeply because, in my assessment, leadership is inherently human and thus inherently imperfect. We often think of leadership as having to be right or perfect or an expert all the time. But I've just learned that true leadership is really about owning your mistakes, learning publicly, and staying committed to growing in front of others. And that takes a level of vulnerability and humility that just some people aren't prepared for when they step into a leadership role. I would say my journey in Chapel Hill, especially through programs like the Equity and Empathy Ambassadors or crisis situations, really taught me that imperfection isn't a flaw. It's really a source of credibility. It's a source of connection, and it's a source of really fueling that authenticity that we need to have as leaders. So, when you embrace imperfection, you give others permission to be authentic too. So it deeply resonates with me. I also think that leading as an imperfect leader is not about accepting mediocrity, if that makes sense. I think it's about continually and relentlessly pursuing excellence while being honest about the crazy stuff or the bumps along the way. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. So I want to talk a minute about the Mosaic Project. It is one of our favorite organizations and has over 25 years of experience empowering students to really celebrate differences, communicate assertively, and resolve conflict peacefully at their outdoor school. I happen to have experience being part of the Mosaic Project, and so I can absolutely tell you it's an amazing organization. Their innovative SEL curriculum is now available to our Imperfect Leader audience. And so you can get a 10% discount through their new documentary film-based Mosaic Classroom Project. So just let the people know during your onboarding process to receive that 10% discount is to just mention an Imperfect Leader. Learn more about the Mosaic Project at mosaicproject.org.
This is Greg Meyer, Jamie's partner at APC Leadership Collaborative. Superintendents know that school principals are the single biggest lever that any school district has for improving student joy and success. Unfortunately, there's very little professional development for the specific things that a principal has to do to improve their school. At APC Leadership Collaborative, we specialize in coaching principals to take on audacious goals, build their leadership skills, and make big improvements in their school. If that inspires you, let's connect and talk about how we can collaborate. Find APC Leadership Collaborative online at apccolab.com.
When leaders think in systems, they think differently. They see the big picture, making decisions that create coherence and strengthen communication across their teams. They build adaptability, flexibility, and engagement. Every day, school leaders face complex challenges, from student engagement to staff alignment. What if your team could see those challenges as part of a bigger picture? That's what happens when you think in systems. It's how leaders turn complexity into connection and challenges into opportunities for growth. At the Waters Center for Systems Thinking, we help educators and organizations build this capacity, developing the habits and tools that turn vision into action. Think differently, think in systems. Sign up for our webinars, free resources, or a consultation by visiting our website, which you can find in the show notes.
We're back for segment 2 of an Imperfect Leader called Imperfect Leadership in After Action. My guest today is Dr. Nyah Hamlett, the Chief Equity and Development Officer with Montgomery County Public Schools in Maryland. Now, in this segment, we ask our guests to deconstruct a decision that they made and what they learned from it. Nyah, what happened?
Goodness. The thing that comes to mind for me, a community member with, I believe, some mental health challenges entered a school building on the first day of school, assaulted 2 teachers, walked through the building, past several students, and went out the front door and then entered a parent's car in the car rider line. with her children inside. There were no weapons involved, but the incident was a major safety breach. There were a number of issues from that standpoint, but also I found out about this incident after hours because my youngest child happened to attend that school. I hadn't dropped him off yet, but I found out at the dinner table that evening. My husband said, "Wow, you had an eventful first day of school." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he was like, "You didn't see the principal's email?" No, because we have safety incidents notification and protocols and communication protocols. None of those things were followed the way that they were supposed to. So I had to go to my personal email, which I don't check during the day, read the email from the school leader. And then I started getting emails and calls from community members and board members.
Oh, and the media.
Thank goodness it did not reach the media.
Okay.
But I certainly, like the flood of calls. Now, it reached the social media.
Of course.
But not the media. But yeah, I found out about it after hours at my dinner table.
Wow.
Thursday.
Okay. We need to talk about this from two perspectives, I think. One, just the role of superintendent, and then also the system. Because when I say what got overlooked, that's really a system piece, because in this case, you had no direct supervision over this incident. Although from a superintendent's perspective, what got overlooked was like, actually, it's more of the system piece. If protocols seem to have been followed or not followed. So let me ask it this way. Now, as we think about this, what got overlooked?
Yeah. So I will say a number of things. So I reacted rather than responding by trying to fix it through district level communications and external facing kind of damage control. I relied on secondhand accounts from my HR team, my operations and safety folks, my communications leaders, my leadership team leaders, but I never directly consulted the principal at the outset. So I think that was a misstep on my part. And that's another thing that got overlooked. I overlooked the importance of a direct restorative conversation with the school leader to co-create a follow-up and somewhat of that damage control plan. And so instead, what I ended up doing was I defaulted to, you may be familiar with restorative practices, right?
Of course.
Those who are listening may be familiar with. And so the fundamental premise of restorative practice is about doing things with people rather than to them or for them. I think in this situation, what got overlooked was I defaulted to and for leadership rather than with leadership. And so there were a number of missteps, I would say, that I made and that got overlooked in the way that I responded or reacted to not just the incident and the safety issues, but the communication that went out to the school community.
When I think about restorative practices, you also think about who has been harmed and then how do you restore what has been broken. And so you're incredible right now in your willingness to talk about in terms of what got overlooked from your perspective. I'm going to broaden this a little bit just from a superintendent listening lens of the system. Also, there's some overlooking going on there in terms of if there are established protocols, follow the protocols so that your board is well informed. It doesn't hear about it through social media or at the supermarket or then themselves just in their own children, those types of things. So there's a piece there that really got overlooked. You really start to talk through about relationships and how you reacted. And so the relationship piece is strained when you potentially go an HR route before going to the human side of human-centered leadership, of going in and having a conversation with the principal. Would you say that's what you learned about relationships, or what other pieces may have been learning in terms of relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say I learned that indirect communication erodes trust. And for me, I really struggle. I know this about myself. I really struggle when other people don't own up to their own missteps and then they step aside and allow you to be the target or the villain. And that's an inherent part of leadership.
Right. People like to be celebrated. And then they go, what happened? Probably somebody should deal with that.
Exactly. Exactly. And so I think that I learned that not everyone is willing to step up and say, you know what, mea culpa. Like, yes, I made a mistake and let's own it. I learned that relying on intermediaries distorts intent and creates misinterpretation.
Yeah. And
Now,
sometimes
when
those
you're-
intermediaries enjoy the drama a little bit.
Sometimes they do. Sometimes they do.
I'm not suggesting in
And
your situation that's the case. I am simply thinking about my own experiences of something happening in a school, not finding out for 3 months, and then all of a sudden discovering that the juvenile office was involved in this person. And then all of a sudden, as you're trying to work through intermediaries, trying to respect the hierarchy of the system, that lots of people are like, they love the drama. Oh, he's upset about this.
Yeah.
So
And I know my team, they prided themselves on not allowing me to get into the weeds. And I think that was a form of protection that they really strived for. In this situation, though, I should have gone directly to the source and probably kind of worked through that problem or that challenge with the school leader directly. I would say another thing I learned is that missteps are often assumed to be intentional slights, if not addressed person to person. Another thing in this incident that I learned is that disrespect isn't limited by race or perhaps even gender. So I received painful disrespect from within my own community, which I would say highlighted internalized biases and misplaced frustrations with and within that school and the school system. And then
the crabs in the
also-
bucket kind of experience.
Yeah, yeah. And I know that there are some things that were said and some things that were done that had I been a male or had I been a white male, the community and the folks in that school would not have responded in the way that they did to the way that I chose to fix the situation. Not that I had all the answers, or it reinforced that leadership is really, it's relational, it's not positional.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I wonder almost if you even want to revisit the imperfect leader definition. When I say, how does it resonate for you? A dear friend of mine, Sharonica Hardin Bartley in University City. So, Wash U is right there. So she's got a lot of university folks who will send their kids to elementary and then decide they don't want to go to middle and high school. Although I think that's changing because of her leadership. And when I asked Sharonica, how does the term resonate for you? She said, and I'm happy to play it for you at some point. But basically she said, that's a privilege for someone who looks like you, because I don't always get the opportunity to make a mistake. I have to work twice as hard to get half as far. And you got to understand, I appreciate imperfect leadership and I will give people grace. I'm not sure I always get it. And she didn't say exactly that, but that's how I inferred it.
Yeah. Yes. I'm going to have to go back and listen to that episode.
I'm going to send that to you. I'll send it to you because it's like, she was like, let me tell you something.
Yeah.
In the end, what was something good that came out of this experience? And that's hard, right? Because you're like, wait, there are a lot of hurt relationships. But I imagine subsequent decisions, subsequent incidents may have been handled differently.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking more in the mindset of the frustrations associated with it. But
I skipped that question. What frustrated you? It seemed pretty clear. Dr. Hamlett, what was frustrating?
oh, goodness. No, I mean, there were a number of frustrations.
Yeah.
The reaction of school staff and some community members to my written message of just trying to be clear and transparent and take on some accountability, or the reaction after the incident, I went to the school and met with the staff and was willing to meet with them face to hear them out. But everything from accusations of throwing the school under the bus and upholding white supremacy culture because I tried to be unapologetic yet still acknowledge intent versus impact. But what I overlooked, and it was also frustrating, but that in systems shaped by white supremacy culture, good intentions don't shield you from harmful impacts.
That is profound. Yeah.
And it goes along with what you were saying, your other guest said, especially when you're expected to give endlessly without reciprocity. I received emails that are like, how dare you're just a visitor here. Or I actually chose to transfer my child out of that school. And there was a breach of privacy regarding my personal decision. But what people didn't know was that my child had been assaulted by an employee the year before, grabbed him by his arm, yelled at him, made him stand in a corner and cry because he was talking to a friend at the same time that the teacher was teaching. And the principal, quite frankly, didn't address it with the employee to my satisfaction. My husband emailed the board and anyway, I say all those things.
I hear it. Yeah.
The incident itself was the final grievance for me. And I had to make a personal decision to protect my own child. But what many people, and this is a frustration, what many people did not know is that despite all that transpired publicly, I was actually privately protecting the principal with my board, advocating for her despite clear leadership missteps, but that narrative wasn't visible to others. And it was very frustrating. I told you, I often say, I don't like when adult issues get in the way of what children need. It was clear that people were prioritizing feelings or the reputation of the school over the actual safety and well-being of the staff and students. And that was just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
So I would say ultimately, Peter, I was frustrated with myself because I came to the painful realization that I had allowed my family's needs to become secondary to the demands of the district. And over time, that sacrifice, I would say, began to really breed resentment for me. I was pouring everything into leading with integrity and clarity and accountability and empathy. And I was showing up fully for a community that I loved. But in doing so, I was really neglecting my own family's mental, physical, and emotional well-being.
Yeah.
And I feel like I was serving a community that in many ways simply didn't have the capacity to love me back. And so all of those things all together it was just very frustrating. But I could have done a lot differently.
No, let me say, thank you for having the courage to share this deeply personal and still, to some extent, likely raw experience. This is not like a number of people come on this program and say, let me tell you about a time 30 years ago. And you're like, 30 years ago? You're like, let me tell you about a time 30 weeks ago. So
You're right.
When I think about what was something that was good that came out of this experience, and now it seems even more obvious why your face was like, what? But this is what I would like to observe is that don't flinch leadership, as you described it in segment 1, is exactly what you just led with. I mean, you were able to model and show your son, your spouse, your community that you have values and that you're going to live them. And so what was something that was good that came out of this? When faced with living your values, you did. Yeah. Even if that meant having to change a job and leave him. That you were not going to sacrifice your family, your health, and your own well-being. And I think that is really amazing.
Yeah. Thank you. As you can tell, I'm still in the, I would say, healing process.
You're amazing.
Not just from that incident, but from the many wounds that we take on as leaders.
I think the superintendency, everybody thinks that we're just, that's what you get paid for. Nah, not really. I actually want to be the lead learner and teacher.
Yeah.
And I want to show kids and staff how much I love and want to support them. No, I didn't. This is not about getting beaten up on a regular basis.
That's
I
right.
really am grateful. Thank you for sharing your story. I think if it's all right, we'll end there. My guest today was Dr. Nyah Hamlett, the former superintendent for the Chapel Hill-Carrboro City Schools, now serving as the Chief Equity and Development Officer with Montgomery County Public Schools in Maryland. I wrote a couple of notes here. One was when you said that your husband says, when I was in school, but when he was in school, when you and I were in school, it was a hierarchy. It was all about compliance. And you have worked really hard to shift that from and agitate the system to think about it doing differently. And I love your example of the equity and empathy ambassadors. What a great way to begin shifting the system and having almost a huge coalition of young people saying, we want something different. And so
we'll argue about data and all kinds of things.
Sure.
You can't argue with student voice.
No, you said the courage over convenience. And that equals their student voice. And I look forward to learning a little bit more about our turn because I certainly want to begin incorporating this idea of who benefits and who is burdened by this decision. Thank you so much for your leadership and your wisdom today. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you again for having me. This is a great conversation. And like I said, very much a healing process for me. So thank you.
We are back.
Hey, so where do you want to go with this? Basically hyped Dr. Hamlett up. I hope people, having listened, realize what the gift
How
you
could
just
they
got.
not? How could they not?
I hope that's true. I really do.
Yeah.
Because that's a gift. That's a re-listener as well. That's one that I'm going to go, oh, I'm going back.
Oh, I agree.
There's a few like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, where I would start is because I encourage people to not to flinch. So what did that mean? And I really, when I was first doing before I interview anybody, I do a ton of research about who they are and things that they say or read. And so she had this don't flinch leadership philosophy, and I asked her to talk about it. And I'm so glad that I did, because I had an idea of what I understood it to be. And she really, her more human response to it really helped me understand, particularly when she says something around, you got to choose courage over convenience. And especially when it deals with issues of equity, student voice, system change. When those things are involved, you got to choose courage over convenience. And I've had guests who have talked about courage as not being such an attractive word, or thinking that courage is blindly leading. That's not the takeaway I had from Nyah. I was just like, oh man, she really obviously knows what she's talking about when she talks about choosing courage over convenience, because so many of us are willing to withdraw to hold on to the job. And she was like, nope, even if it means my having to leave, I'm going to step forward into the fire. And I thought, wow.
Courage over convenience, in relation to how Dr. Hamlett talks about it, is specifically not blind leadership, but rather, I know what the consequences are likely to be, and I step forward anyway.
Yeah, it's wide open, eyes wide open.
Eyes wide open.
Yeah.
What is it? The cure for the pain's in the pain. You're going to walk right into it. And I know that I'm going to do that. And I do that as a leader, and I'm ready to take the hit. I just thought, that's impressive. So impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I loved it. I thought that was amazing. Her that don't flinch at did she call it a philosophy? It reminded me of a mantra, right? That I'm scared, I'm nervous in this moment, but don't flinch. That helps steal my courage so that I can walk into the thing that I'm afraid of.
Yep.
And
Agreed.
I loved it. Loved it.
So examples including, I think, when a leader is willing to authentically and genuinely include student voice into decision making and then run with it, as opposed to just having this veneer of course we listen to students and their voice is important. She really talked about a real shared decision making with students.
You know what she said that I thought was really profound was she talked about the equity ambassadors, right? Is that what it was called?
Equity and empathy. Yeah.
Equity and empathy ambassadors. That's so good. That there was a decision that didn't go the students' way, or at least some number of the students wanted a different thing. And she said it didn't go their way, but I'll use a quote, their dissent sharpened the work. That phrase, their dissent sharpened the work, is probably my favorite of her reflections, in that it reframes their participation. Their participation isn't so that you follow whatever they say blindly, and their participation isn't to be ignored. Oh, thank you for talking. That's so cute that you talked. We're going to do this other thing. No, we're going to sometimes do what you suggest, and sometimes we're not going to do what you suggest. But when you dissent, I want you to know that the work itself will change. It won't necessarily go your direction, but it's better.
You know what it made me think about? It made me think of the fact that if one could argue, or one should argue, that schools are designed or should be designed to really introduce what it means to live in a democracy. And what she's doing is giving students agency to be real contributing members to that democracy. And that means that maybe sometimes things are not going to go your way. However, you got to authentically participate in the process.
Yeah. Exactly. Can I make a shift to the equity and empathy ambassadors?
Yeah.
She talked about it was related to their perspectives on achieving equity in schools and all the different ways in which they addressed it, related to grading, related to schedule, et cetera, which I think are exactly the kind of conversations that we should be engaging students with and on. But she asked this question that she got from another organization, which was, who will experience the burden or benefit of this decision? That question is brilliant because it has you thinking about the all of the different players for whom this decision might have an impact. And when you include students in that thinking, you're now thinking about those that are actually the receivers of the service that we're providing as public educators. And so to me, that if anybody walks away with anything from Nyah's reflections, it's that. Please ask this question every time you're making a decision around policy.
I love it because typically when I'm coaching other leaders, when we're walking through our process, I'll often ask one of those habits of systems thinking questions about whose voice is not at the table, or who's not in the room right now, or if we're going to make decisions with the people most impacted, who might not be here to express how this decision might make them feel. And that's all well and good. I still think those are good questions. Her question gets to the heart of it. Who's going to benefit from this, and who's going to be burdened by it? That gets really, it forces you to have an image in your head about who's going to be burdened and who's going to be benefited. Oh, so good. So good. But another deeper layer of decision making. I do want to go to her after action review to whatever level that you feel comfortable talking about it in terms of, I mean, it was probably one of the more profound after action reviews because obviously it's recent, it's personal.
Yes.
Likely still raw.
Yes.
And it was the culminating event of the first part of our conversation about don't flinch leadership, amplifying student voice, like really being the kind of leader that is reflective and thoughtful about and vulnerable. And then she practiced all of that. And yeah, so what, I don't know where to start. Where would you start?
I think it's in the running for the best after action review I've ever heard. Your comment about some people say, go with 30 years ago, Lord.
Because those are safe, right? But she says,
they're safe.
Don't flinch leadership means I'm not going to tell you about something from 30 years ago. I'm going to tell you something that happened. What did I say in the conversation?
Just happened
weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Just happened. So I guess I don't want to over analyze it. What I said to you about her after action review earlier off camera basically was that her humility in leadership is without match. I have not seen this, nor did I mean, to be honest, and I've only known Nyah a short amount of time, nor did I know the depth of humility that she carries. It's impressive, truly impressive. And I think that the way in which she reflects, she's not even trying to throw anybody under the bus. She's saying, this hurt. This was hard. I didn't do everything all that well. And I'm trying to do better now.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the one piece I'd say, I mean, she reflected on, I actually stood up for others who were in a position to be absolutely raked over the coals by others, by those in leadership positions at the district level. And I wouldn't let it happen because my job is to take care of everybody who I lead.
Right.
And there's probably something I could have done. There are definitely things others could have done. And in the end, I had to choose courage over convenience. And I could have just let it go or moved on but no, I wouldn't have been showing the people I was leading, the family members who looked to me to know that they were safe with me. I mean, just wow. So this one really is, if there's an aspiring person out there, if there's new leaders out there, even those who are experienced, who are influencing the leadership of many of their subordinates, this should be one of the things that they listen together and then discuss as a team, because it'll make for better team decisions moving forward.
I love it. I love it. I think it's a masterclass of humble leadership and imperfect leadership. So it's great.
I want to thank everyone for listening.
Yeah.
I'm like giving us, I don't even know. I felt like I was standing at the podium, like giving like a keynote. I want to thank you all for being here.
Yeah.
Truly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Don't
You've
forget
been
to stiff your waitresses.
Good
night.
Stiff? Or now I know why your kid can't say the word chess. No, tip them. Don't stiff them.
Tip.
I thought you said stiff. You've been listening to An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents and Leadership Podcast. We're so thankful you give us time each week. And don't forget, you can give us 5 stars. You can put a little note in there, a little whatever you want to say, but 5 stars help. All right. See you next week, Jamie.
Yeah. See you then.